Mark Wahlberg stepped onto the set of The Graham Norton Show, the familiar red couch gleaming under the studio lights like a velvet trap. He flashed his trademark grin, the one that had sold millions of tickets, but tonight it felt tighter, like a mask slipping at the edges. The audience erupted in cheers, a wave of applause that drowned out the faint hum of the air conditioning. He didn't know it yet, but this appearance, meant to promote his latest action flick, would unravel something deeper, something he'd buried under layers of Hollywood polish and redemption narratives. As he settled in beside fellow guests, a bubbly British comedian and a rising pop star, Graham Norton leaned forward with that mischievous glint in his eye. "Mark, darling, you've come a long way from your Calvin Klein days. But tell us, what's it like looking back at the wild kid from Boston?" The question hung in the air, innocent enough on the surface, but Mark felt a flicker in his chest. He laughed it off, the crowd joining in, but inside, the old ghost stirred. Mark had arrived in London that morning, jet-lagged and irritable, his publicist trailing him like a shadow. The flight from LA had been turbulent, mirroring the unease he'd felt ever since agreeing to this gig. At 54, he was a family man now, 4 kids, a devoted wife, a string of faith-based films that painted him as the reformed bad boy. But the invites kept coming, and saying no felt like admitting defeat. "It's just promo," his agent had said. "Graham's a pro, it'll be fun." The studio smelled of fresh coffee and polished leather, the kind of artificial warmth that masked the cold machinery behind the scenes. Backstage, Mark had paced the green room, glancing at his reflection in the mirror. The tattoos on his arms, remnants of his rap days as Marky Mark, peeked from under his crisp button-down. He adjusted his collar, ignoring the faint scar on his knuckle from a long-ago fight. "You've got this," he muttered to himself, a mantra honed from years of therapy and AA meetings. His life was a success story, from juvenile delinquent to A-lister. What could go wrong on a chat show? Graham steered the conversation smoothly at first, chatting about the new movie, a gritty thriller where Mark played a cop haunted by his past. The pop star gushed about her crush on him, and the comedian cracked jokes about his abs. Mark relaxed, sipping water from a branded mug, the ice clinking softly. But then Graham pulled out a clip from Mark's early days, a grainy video of him performing shirtless in the 90s. The audience whooped, but Graham's smile turned sharper. "You've spoken about your regrets, Mark. That assault conviction when you were 16, blinding a man in one eye. How does that sit with you now?" The question landed like a punch. Mark's jaw tightened, his fingers gripping the armrest. He knew this could come up, his past was public record. 2 assaults on Vietnamese men in 1988, fueled by racial slurs and teenage rage. He'd served 45 days in prison, turned his life around. But hearing it phrased like that, in front of a live audience, made his stomach churn. "Yeah, Graham, I've owned that," he said, his Boston accent thickening. "I was a dumb kid, full of anger. I've apologized, worked with communities. It's not who I am anymore." The comedian shifted uncomfortably, and the pop star's eyes widened. Graham nodded sympathetically, but pressed on. "And the pardon you sought in 2014? Some say it was to erase the felony for business reasons. Critics called it tone-deaf, especially with the Black Lives Matter movement gaining steam." Mark felt the heat rise in his cheeks. This wasn't the light-hearted banter he'd expected. The audience murmured, a mix of support and unease. He glanced at the crowd, spotting a few phones glowing, tweeting already, no doubt. Back in his mind, Mark flashed to that night in Boston, the one he'd relived in nightmares. He was high, drunk, chasing 2 Vietnamese brothers down the street. "Go back to your country," he'd yelled, swinging a stick. The older man, Tom Lamb, lost vision in one eye. Mark had been charged with attempted murder, pled down to assault. At the time, it was just another scrape in a life of scraps. Now, it was a stain that wouldn't wash out, no matter how many charities he funded or how devoutly he prayed. As the segment broke for ads, Mark's publicist whispered from the wings, "You're doing great. Keep it positive." But the tension lingered, like the faint buzz of the overhead lights. When they returned, Graham introduced a surprise, a video message from a fan. The screen flickered to life, showing an older Asian man in a modest living room. "Hi, Mark. I'm Johnny Trin. You might not remember me, but in 1986, you and your friends attacked me and my friend on Dorchester Avenue. You called us gooks, beat us with rocks. I still have the scars. The studio fell silent. Mark's face drained of color. This wasn't in the script. Johnny's voice was steady, factual. I've seen your movies, heard your apologies. But when you asked for a pardon, it felt like you were erasing us. I'm not angry anymore, just want you to know we exist. The clip ended, and the audience held its breath. Graham looked genuinely surprised, though Mark doubted it. Mark, any response? Mark's mind raced. Johnny Trin, the other incident, 2 years before the Lam assault. He'd thrown rocks, hurled slurs at 2 Vietnamese men. No charges filed back then, but it was documented. How had Graham's team found him? Was this ambush journalism disguised as entertainment? His hands trembled slightly as he leaned forward. I do remember. And I'm sorry, Johnny. Truly. I was a racist punk back then. No excuses. His voice cracked, the first real emotion slipping through. The pop star reached over, touching his arm awkwardly. That's brave to admit, she said softly. But the comedian jumped in, trying to lighten it. Oh blimey, this show's gone from fun to therapy session. Laughter rippled, uneasy. Graham steered back. It's powerful stuff. Mark, you've built an empire Wahlberg's producing. But does success absolve the past? Mark felt the conflict boiling inside. Part of him wanted to storm off, call it a setup. Another part knew this was his chance for real catharsis. The audience was split, some clapped supportively, others whispered. A woman in the front row, Asian descent, wiped her eyes. Was she planted? Paranoia crept in. He thought of his kids watching at home, his wife texting encouragement. No, it doesn't absolve, he admitted. But I've tried to make amends. Donated to anti-hate groups, spoken out. What more can I do? The nap tension escalated as Graham revealed more emails from activists criticizing Mark's pardon bid, highlighting how it ignored victims. One wrote, he's profiting off violence in films while burying his own. Mark shot back, his voice rising. That's not fair. My films are fiction. I've changed. The exchange heated, dialogue snapping like whip cracks. Have you, though? Graham probed gently, but it stung. Your 9/11 comments saying you'd have stopped the hijackers. Some called that insensitive. Mark rubbed his temples, the studio lights feeling like spotlights in an interrogation room. Flashbacks hit, the prison cell, the shame. Internal monologue swirled, why now? Why me? Am I still that guy? The audience sensed the shift. Whispers grew. Then, a twist, the pop star, who'd been quiet, spoke up. My dad's immigrant from Vietnam. Stories like this hit home. Her eyes met Mark's, not accusatory, but probing. It humanized her, flipped the dynamic. Mark wasn't just facing Graham, he was facing echoes of his victims in real time. As the show progressed, Mark's defenses cracked further. He shared untold details, the therapy sessions, the letters he'd written to victims, some unanswered. But doubt seeded, was this genuine or performative? The comedian cracked another joke, but it fell flat, met with awkward silence. Nearing the climax, Graham offered a phone-in. A caller, Mark, I'm Ton Lam's nephew. Uncle forgave you years ago, but the pardon hurt. Why not reach out directly? Mark froze, the studio air thick. Time seemed to stop, the only sound his breathing, amplified in his ears. No cameras whirring, no laughs. Just silence, heavy as judgment. Then, the emotional explosion, Mark's eyes welled. I should have. I'm sorry. I'll do it. No more hiding. His voice broke, a raw sob escaping. The audience gasped, some applauding, others stunned. Graham paused, letting the moment breathe. That's powerful, Mark. The show wrapped awkwardly, with promo for the film feeling out of place. Backstage, Mark slumped in a chair, the makeup lights harsh. His publicist buzzed about damage control, but he waved her off. The conflict wasn't over, it lingered, a moral dilemma unresolved. Had he truly atoned, or was fame his shield? In the quiet of his hotel room later, Mark stared at the city lights. The internet was ablaze, clips viral, opinions divided. Some hailed his vulnerability, others decried the whitewashing. He thought of Johnny, of Ton. Maybe redemption wasn't a finish line, but an endless road. And in that aftertaste, one question echoed: in a world hungry for spectacle, do we forgive the flawed, or do we just watch them fall? 3 months later, Mark Wahlberg sat in a dimly lit Boston diner, the same one where he'd filmed Wahlburgers episodes years ago. The air smelled of greasy fries and coffee, a far cry from the sterile glamour of London studios. Across from him was Ton Lamb, the man whose life he'd shattered in 1988. Johnny Trin joined via video call on Mark's phone, his face pixelated but kind. "I didn't expect this," Ton said softly, his accented English measured. At 60 now, he wore a faded Red Sox cap, the scar barely visible under his brow. "Your show, it stirred things up. My family debated if I should come." Mark nodded, his eyes downcast, fiddling with a napkin. No cameras this time, no publicist scripting apologies. "I should have done this sooner. Not for headlines, but because it's right." He slid over a check from his foundation, $500,000 for Vietnamese American youth programs. But money felt hollow. "Can you forgive me, Ton? For real?" Ton paused, the diner hum fading into silence. "Forgiveness isn't a switch, Mark. I've lived with one eye, but I've built a life. You're still running from shadows." Johnny chimed in, "We watched your tears on TV. Was it enough?" The media frenzy had died down, but scars lingered. Viral clips spawned podcasts dissecting Wahlberg's reckoning, with activists praising the vulnerability while others called it performative allyship. Mark's box office dipped slightly, but his faith community rallied. He quit an endorsement deal, donated proceeds to hate crime victims. Yet, nights were restless, dreams of that Dorchester Street, slurs echoing. As they parted, Ton gripped Mark's hand. "Keep showing up. That's the start." Back home, Mark watched his kids play, the weight lighter but present. Redemption wasn't applause, it was this quiet grind. In a world that devours confessions for clicks, who decides when the debt is paid? Or do we all carry unseen wounds, waiting for our spotlight to crack?